koutou. Welcome to our farm. It's really lovely to have you all here today. It's been a bit of a hard slog the last little while trying to get events put together. We're really grateful for St. Peter's and us being able to work within that framework to be able to host on-farm events as well as still do a lot of student activity that we've been able to do. And that's all a big thanks to the wider team that can make this all happen. So just wanted to firstly acknowledge and thank you all for making the time to be here today. I know it's been hard to get out of your businesses or your farms with people being impacted in various ways with COVID and all sorts of things happening. So just firstly want to say a big thank you all for being here today. It's really awesome to have you here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jo Sheridan. I'm the demonstration manager at our farm, and Tom Buckley, who is the farm manager. We've got a bigger, wider support team around us, and I just wanted to introduce a few of them that are here today with us. From Balance, we've got Ian. Where are you, Ian? Sorry, I'm really slow with the mask, so I find it hard to recognise everybody here. From DairyNZ, we've got Frank. Excellent. Fonterra. I'm not sure if Sarah's here, but we've got Emma. Emma's here. Big wave out, Emma. PGG Wrightson's. We've got, I think Casey's here from Agricom. Yeah, awesome. And Westpac Joe. Excellent. And of course, Lincoln University and St. Peter's, who are our joint venture partners. So that's the wider team, including our farmer members too. So we've got Rachel. Where are you, Rach? Yep, Daniel at the back there. Grant. And have I missed anyone? Ian Brown is coming, he'll be a little bit late. So there are also some of the farmer members that make up part of the wider farm management team here at our farm. A couple of things before we get underway is that we are recording this event today. The idea being, for those who couldn't be here, we'll put it on YouTube later for people to be able to watch. So we'll just make sure Tom and I are mic'd up. We'll repeat any questions that come forward just so that we know we can capture them on the video. So just to let you know about that, a couple of other things. Toilets are just over by the palm kennel bin. Help yourself to tea and coffee, and I think there's some cold water there, Kate, is there? Somewhere for people to be able to drink, but we'll make sure we get that ready for you before we head out onto the farm. The plan of attack today really is we're going to spend a bit of time here talking about the season to date, and then we're going to head out via paddock 21. We're going to go into some of our newer grass from last year and then into the cow crop where we'll see the cows there, and then from there we're going to slide on over past our ex-turnip and into the CO2 tower area. So the idea is, after we've talked about the season to date, we'll talk a little bit about some criteria for introducing technology, and then we'll talk a little bit about why soil carbon matters and what we're doing here at our farm with Waikato Uni. So some good presentations lined up. We're going to be a little bit in the heat here, and then once we get out on farm, we've got some gazebos and some chairs set up at the end, so if you're feeling a little bit hot and bothered, hopefully we can give you a bit of reprieve from the heat. We're pretty much planning that today's going to be the last dry day, so we're embracing it while we can. It is St. Paddy's Day. Don't laugh, because traditionally, you know, the rain always comes, and we see that there is some on the forecast, and we've got all our seed in the ground, so the rain is coming, isn't it, Tom?
Hopefully.
We'll raise a glass to Guinness at the end of tonight, and hopefully it will come. But anyway, we thought we'd take the most of the wonderful day. There's sunscreen over there. Make sure you put on a potai or a hat to keep you nice and cool out of the sun. Right. I think that's pretty much it from a health and safety point of view. Yep. The other thing is that you can notice that we're not using any PowerPoints today. This is a bit au naturel. We did want to show off our wonderful new signboard that we put up just last night. What you'll find is that these QR codes all link to parts of our new website. So if you've got a little bit of time and you want to do some self-discovery, you can come up here, you just put your camera on your phone, and each of these lead to different parts of our website. And then we've got our little Wheel of Fortune, which is actually our wheel of the future, because this is really much the core of what our farm's all about. So we'll be referring to this a little bit as we go. Right, so has everyone got a handout? Cool. Hopefully some of you had a chance to look through it last night via the website. If not, we're going to be referring to graphs and pictures that are on there. If you've got a question that might relate to something, maybe just explain which graph you're looking at so that Tom and I know what your question's relating to, and we'll be able to work our way through it a little bit. So I guess really to kick today off, since we last caught up in December, we have had some really great weather for a bit of wakeboarding, bit of time at the beach, Tom, which is really good. But you can see on page 11 of your handout that our temperatures pretty much throughout November, December and February have been the highest in 6 years, along with the highest recorded soil temperatures through December, January and February. So even though our rainfall to date has been about 808 mils, which is pretty much an average rainfall for us, we've had very, very low soil moisture levels, and it hasn't been an easy summer for anyone to farm through. And that seems to be pretty much replicated through most of the country. And I know lots of farmers are going through some challenging times with it at the moment. So what I thought we could do is I'll just get Tom to start off a little bit by just talking a little bit about what's been the impact of these hot and dry conditions on pasture, supplements used and on the cows.
So yeah, as Joe said, we've not had a lot of rain. Great to receive that 112 mils early February, but haven't had anything since. So using that rain, we went out onto a long round, used some sacrifice paddocks while we were feeding the crops, and feeding silage 3 times a day just to split up how much when we were feeding that silage. Yeah, we were feeding up to 8 kilos a day. The test came back pretty low ME on that silage, which was a bit disappointing. Just under 10, wasn't it?
9.3. We tested it twice because we're like, oh really?
It can't
and
be that
it came
bad.
Back again, low quality silage, yeah.
Yeah. So that's had an impact on production as well. Using that 70-day round, we've been able to increase our growth rates. Post rain, we were up to 34 kilos. January was sort of around that 22. So, and now we're down to 10. So we just used our round length and feeding supplement to manage our demand. Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a challenging year when it comes to converting homegrown feed into milk. And what you'll be able to see is we often talk about that on pages 20 and 21. Remember, one of our goals here is we want to do 850 kilograms of milk solids by the 31st of December, and the other one is to be able to harvest 15 tonne of dry matter per hectare. So what we're able to do is track the feed that comes from homegrown feed, and we also look at the amount of supplements that get used during this period. So year to date, this is at the end of February, by the way, we've actually ended up using a bit more imported supplements. A lot of that came off early in in September. We had quite a wettish period there. Can you tell us a little bit about how you had to use the supplements during that period?
So yeah, we used a bit of extra PK through spring. I was hoping to use that wet weather to grow grass ahead of us, but we were just able to eat it all because we didn't really get our peak growth through October and November to create a surplus for silage. So we just used that PK to support production and get that extra dry matter into the cows when it was wet, because the utilisation through late September was pretty low. So we still haven't used more imported supplement than intended. We just use it at a different time of year. And yeah, we're not really looking at buying in any extra unbudgeted supplement until the end of the season.
Right. So our homegrown grass eaten is 8.1 tonnes per hectare versus 8.2 the year before. That is one figure that we always hope to be able to do more in the springtime, but as Tom mentioned, it was a challenging spring to be able to harvest more of that feed, particularly with sort of lower utilisation and more things like palm kernel needed during that period of time. So Connor, that explains a little bit about sort of where we've got to now, and you'll see our milk production graph, which is on page... Find it for you.
It's in there somewhere.
I'm sure I put it in here. Page 16, thank you, Frank. What you'll see, it's the bottom of page 16, graphic 1.9, is that we were actually trucking along quite well through September, October, so July and August was below budget. We often have a bit of a slightly slower calving rate that has been impacting our production target then. September and October, we actually ended up exceeding our budgets during that period of year and actually exceeding last year's production. Things came crashing down a little bit in November and then sort of through December, January and February, and we really haven't been able to maintain the same level of per cow production since then. So I guess we're at the point now, I think today we've seen 150,000 kilos. We're about 5% below season to date and we're tracking around 23% below for the month to date. So I don't know if that's fairly similar to most of you out there. I guess the key thing is, what are we going to be doing now, Tom? So what does the rest of our season look like for us from this point onwards?
So because I couldn't see much rain ahead of us, we did destock in February. I'd already pre-planned my culls for January and February, but with the 13-week mating we were able to sell some late calvers. I think there was 37 up for sale and we managed to get rid of 30. So we'll carry on those other 7 until the end of the season, and a further 25 culls went at the end of February as well. So yeah, we've destocked to almost what we'll carry through to next season, just a surplus of 20 to carry through, and that's just reduced that demand. As we finish off the crops middle and end of next week, we'll be back onto a pasture, silage and palm kernel diet, so we lose that 3 to 4 kilos of crop available. So that's definitely helped, and I still can't see a lot of rain ahead of us. Hopefully we're lucky next week and we do get a decent downpour and we can get those new grasses growing.
So along the way, there's quite a bit of information that we used to plan ahead, Tom. So mid-February, we revised our feed budget to take stock of how much feed we had on farm, getting yields for our crops, and the last bit of information really was about getting body condition score data. We get individual cow data by our Peter, who's our accredited BCS assessor. So effectively, we've got any mixed age cows that are sort of 3.5 or lighter, or any mixed age cows that are 4 or lighter really need to be dried off sort of by the end of this month. We are hoping to be able to get a herd test done in order to get that last herd test for those cows. Those cows, once dried off, need to be putting on those about 0.5 to 0.6 of a BCS a month in order to get back up to target. So we're really, really critical about the time frame needed for these girls. We can't feed high amounts of supplements during that time to be able to get them back up to target weight. So time really is our only tool that we've got on our side. So effectively that leaves us with about 250 cows that should be in good enough nick to be able to milk through if they can maintain their weight through to that early May period. We tend to milk through to about the 10th, probably at the latest of May, given the fact that we're 1st of July planned starter calving. So once you put all that into play, so we looked at how much feed we had available, we looked at our financial budget relative to that, we looked at what the BCS was of our cows and what the average pasture cover was on our farm. We put all that information into FarmX, and that allowed us to revise what our milk solids target will be. So we've gone down from 175,000 being our target. Last year we did 178, something like that.
Yep.
And we've revised down to about 166,640. So that's our new milk solids production target that we've put in place for this year. And within that, there's no budget for extra supplements. We've actually had enough feed to feed the cows. The cows have not been very efficient at converting it. So we've had challenges with like low ME silage, we've had challenges with heat and utilisation, particularly of feeding high amounts of silage, but we've been able to maintain intakes or offerings over 18 kilos throughout that whole period. So it hasn't been that we haven't had enough feed, and then by destocking, getting rid of all those extra cows, it means that we can continue to offer those girls around 18 kilos for this month and probably at least 16 kilos for the months after. Yep. So it's not that we've been short of feed, just from the planning that we've had, it's just that the cows haven't been very efficient at converting it this year. So along the way, we've also had some other things that we've been trying to achieve, haven't we, Tom? So we have a goal of achieving Te Tihi, which if you think about under the Fonterra Cooperative difference, we've got I've got to try and remember this now. Te Putaki, I think, is the baseline. And then I'm looking for Emma. Where are you, Emma? Make sure I'm on target here. And then the next one is Te... can't remember. And then the top one is the Te Tahi, which is to reach 90%. So you need 30 days... I think it's 30 days minimum of excellence quality to be able to qualify for that extra 3 cents. So the 7 cents is your baseline, and what we're aiming to get is 90% of our milk at the excellence quality. So for us, it's been really easy to unlock the first 7 cents and to unlock the next, to be able to have access to the next 3 cents. What's been more challenging is maintaining 90% of our milk at that excellence quality. Remember, the 2 big drivers for that is our FEI and the somatic cell count being 150,000 or less. So how has it been managing that excellence quality, Tom? What have been some of the challenges along the way, and where are we at with it now?
We're tracking about 79% now, 195 days out of the 242. We swapped to 3 and 2 milking on the 20th of December, and we found every second day our cell count sort of had a spike on it was the largest hour split, but also the 1 milking pickup. But also feeding a bit of PK and the brassicas has spiked the FEI as well. We've managed the palm kernel down from sort of between 3 and 2 kilos. That seems to have settled that down. With volumes going down per cow the last few weeks, it started to creep back up again. So hopefully once we come off the brassicas, we'll be able to reduce that down a little bit.
Yeah. Yes, go for it. Go, Gary.
Can you just back up a little bit to your feeding and comment on you're feeding your cows 18 kilos and you commented about the quality of the silage. So, in hindsight, was it a mistake to feed low quality silage and could the pasture, even though it's potentially reasonably dry, have been a better quality so you got better milk production? So I suppose what I'm saying is you're offering too much feed to your cows, they couldn't eat 18 kilos. Probably were eating an inferior quality feed rather than focusing on the pasture.
Yep, so good question, Gary. So why, I guess the question is, in hindsight, would we have replaced that low quality silage with more of the pasture on farm potentially? Bearing in mind that at the time, we were able to get covers back up to about 23, I think, after the rain. Yep. So tell us, Tom, a little bit about the strategy with having the longer rotation and why we persevered putting more grass silage in order to extend the round and hopefully be able to capture some more grass growth. Probably just answered the question.
Yeah, I think you just answered the question for me, but I'll try and remember what you said.
Tell me your thinking. What was your thinking behind it?
So we purchased the silage in the spring because our soil moisture was still very low in the spring, even though we had a wet September. We were same as last season. We were growing what we were eating, so we weren't going to create that 200 to 250 tonne of grass silage that we need to carry through summer and a little bit through winter. So we purchased that silage. Unfortunately, it got rained on. Half of it was winter saved pasture, so that it was very similar to what we bought the previous year, which was up in the 11% ME. So yeah, disappointed that that's the way it was. Heading through January and December and January, our pasture cover was on a decline already, just with higher demand. So we might have got 1 round of extra pasture, but then we would have had no pasture left. So gratefully received that that rain in early February. So I thought, well, while we've got moisture available to the plants, we can really make best use of that growth. So we went from about 1900 cover up to that 23, which gave us confidence that we could start reducing the pasture silage and increasing the pasture. And we did have a milk response, and since we've changed it again down from 6 kilos of silage to 4 and increased the grass, we've gone from 1.15 to just over 1.2 again. So I think you're absolutely right, but given that in January I didn't know we were going to get 100 mils in February, we played our card.
Yeah. The other balance in that too, Gary, was what was happening with spore counts, and all predictions or writing on the wall was that we were going to have quite high spore count load on pasture. And so because we dosatron zinc as our method of application. It was always a challenge forcing the cows to graze quite low into pastures at that time of the year. By diluting their diet a little bit, even though it's low quality feed, it was helping to alleviate some of that risk that was with that as well. The cows were challenged a little bit in the heat grazing quite low in pastures as well. They tended to, I don't know, they just didn't graze hard down into the swards even when they were offered enough feed. So it probably, thinking in hindsight, the things that we could do probably better though would probably test the silage earlier. If we had known in say maybe late November that the silage was going to be that quality, we might have put something else in place. It wasn't until we opened up the stack that we started to test it, and by then we had already committed to a feed plan which was involving that grass silage. So yeah, definitely something that we can look at again. Yeah. Malcolm?
Have you done any modelling of reviewing the silage program? It's not uncommon that a lot of imported silage is not the quality you can make on farm, because it's usually at the stage they make it or they can make it. Have you done any modelling that you increased your nitrogen in the growing part so you could get more silage off your farm, a big area or so? Now, would that upset your nitrogen levels that you want to achieve for the year, or would the grass take it up, or is there anything being done along that line?
Yep, great question. So have we done any modelling around efficient nitrogen used to effectively generate that surplus? The answer is yes. Definitely. So what we did last year is as we've been transitioning a reduced nitrogen fertiliser within our business, so originally we were about 160 units, we went down to 138, we're on target now for 129 units of nitrogen. This is aligned with reducing our nitrate leaching figure, okay? So we want to get down to around that sort of, we want it to be decreasing, but we want to get down to about sort of below 32. What we did with My Pasture Planner is My Pasture Planner allows you to look at where you'll get the most efficient response to nitrogen in your system, and then it also looks at where you've got the greatest gap from a feed supply and demand point of view. So what we were able to do is take out any time periods where we knew we were high risk with our nitrogen, so May, June and July. May, the only nitrogen we tend to use is for our new grass because it's really important for their longevity. June and July we tend to have things like Projib in place if we need it and supplements, and then August, September we use nitrogen primarily to help fill a feed gap, and then October, November we have nitrogen allocated for making silage on farm. So we are using information like total N soil tests as well to know where we're going to get the most efficient use of it, but we do try and allocate it at the time where we're going to be able to generate the most cost-effective surplus. But even this year we weren't getting the response rates because the soil moisture levels were still quite low, even though we had the rainfall. We just didn't get that real peaky growth like we normally would. So yeah, we do have a strategy for it, Malcolm, but the weather didn't play in our cards this year to be able to get as much silage as we needed. Yep.
Just building on Gary's question, I was going to ask the same question but a different way. You push that rotation out to 70 days and understand the logic behind it. I guess the key thing is, with the learnings that have come from it, given the same circumstances again, because dries are going to probably become more frequent, not less frequent, would you make the same decision, or would you actually still push your round out but not perhaps to the 70 days? I think you went out to 60 or 70 pretty much straight away.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I'll back myself. I think yeah, I only made that plan because we got so much rain, and I was monitoring that rain going forward. Yeah, and I said to the staff, you know, we'll try and eat as much grass as we can up until that rain arrives, because you want to utilise all of the dead leaves that still have some value. Once they get wet, they'll rot away, and you lose a lot of dry matter available in the paddock. So that gave us the opportunity to go, well, which paddocks are we going to undersow in the autumn? We'll nail them out, clean out all the summer grass, and try and get yeah, the regrassing done.
So you do the same again?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the critical part was when the rain came. It actually came too early for us, to be fair. We had a little bit of feed still available. Later February rain, you tend to get follow-up March rain. When it comes in early February, we pretty much knew that we'll probably get a dry period following it, and so our only way really was to push feed forward. And at that time we still had about 36% of the farm that was still actively growing, so we knew we had a part of the farm that wasn't going to have that severe rot down that we could actually implement that strategy. But give us 2 weeks, George, 3 weeks, the decision might change a bit, but it was based on soil moisture levels, rainfall, and what we were predicting to happen. So yeah.
Thank you.
So just to get a head around your decision making, or the decision making process on the farm, what is the overall objective of the farm? Is it to optimise farming strategy, or is it environmental, or what's your aim of having our farm here?
The idea is, or the aim is to demonstrate excellence in farm performance that leads to a sustainable future. So when we look at our farm production system, every decision we make is aligned with our environmental footprint, aligned with our quality workplace, and aligned with what our community values are around what we're trying to achieve on farm. And it has to be financially sustainable and generate a healthy, robust business that can continue into the future. So when we look at our farm system in particular, and this year's a great example, we had the same decision last year where we could have brought in a whole lot of feed, we could have generated a whole lot of profit, but we also understood what the implication was going to be on our greenhouse gas and our nitrate leaching. And so we're always balancing that decision. So we can't always just generate more profit at the expense of having a higher environmental footprint, or at the compromise of quality workplace outcomes. So using the wagon wheel, Gary, is how we try and balance the decision making, and every time we sit around the table with our wider team, we have to consciously think about where the trade-offs are, and we have to be very certain that that is the way our future farm system is going to look.
So to follow up on that then, and I get that, so the interesting thing is, have you actually made the problem worse rather than better? And strictly from an environmental sustainability point of view. So, if I look at the production of pasture 976 so far, I think this year, have we actually progressed past where Arnold Bryant was said it was just carbon date, stocking rate, and drying off date? And you've got the most dry matter on the farm the day before it rains, and you're not measuring it because of the plate meter and everything else doesn't measure your actual dry matter. And so you just go round until the day it rains, dry your cows off and feed them solids in, and you'll be fine. And you're probably doing the same production. And so I suppose my point is, are you to meet your objective actually overcomplicating the process?
So when you say overcomplicating, I think every farmer is dealing with complications, right? We just are able to put some KPIs around our complications. So if I asked you, what is your objective from an environmental footprint point of view, and then how is your farm system contributing to it, that's what we need to be able to understand and be able to share and talk about. So it may seem complicated, but when you actually start to talk about the different areas and have a balanced view as to where your system's going, it actually makes the decision making easier. So Tom and I, we don't have to sit there and go, oh, is there more money to be made if we do this or that every time a decision comes along, because our system is aligned with where our future farm system needs to be to meet these objectives. So we stick with the plan. We know through modelling that will allow us to move forward into that, to get closer to those outcomes. It doesn't make it overly complicated from a farm management decision point of view, does it, Tom? I don't know, you might think it does, but... but we're not having to reassess and reevaluate every time because we have a clear direction of what the future looks like.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, George.
Look, really love your wagon wheel approach, and likewise to Tom and Leanne, because it takes a lot of data to make that work and a lot of work done behind the scenes. Has either DairyNZ or Lincoln University turned that into a template yet that we can all use? Because I was on a farm the other day and they had spent $20,000 or $30,000 getting a report, but each benchmark they used for each KPI was a different set of farms. So it's, am I the tallest of short people or the shortest of tall people,
Yeah.
You can judge.
Yeah.
And so the $30,000 report, you might as well put it in the bin because every benchmark was different. But if we go to wagon wheel type approach, then we can actually start measuring like for like. Now, each farming family might have a different weighting to where they put it in there. I absolutely accept that.
Yeah.
But it actually starts to formulate the thinking process, the things that we actually need to consider. So I guess the question is to people who fund this, the Lincoln and DairyNZ, have we actually turned that into a template yet that every farming entity can use if they so desire? Because it's brilliant. I really like it, and I've said to big corporate entities, this is the future.
I think that's why we're here, aren't we? We're trying to get it out there.
Yeah. Thank you, George.
Template, I'd go download on and start filling in what works for me, you know.
Yeah.
At my farm.
Yeah, so the question was, George talked about the value that comes out of having the wagon wheel template, and that lots of people have got a similar approach, but is there any industry support to be able to pick up and use this sort of template? Now, anybody who's ever done, has anyone in here done mark and measure before? The mark and measure course? Yep, you have, Rach, yep. So they have that concept of the wagon wheel when it comes to some of your goal planning and also understanding how you're working towards those. I don't think DairyNZ has picked up it as a template in which you can insert your KPIs per se outside of doing that mark and measure course, and I don't think Lincoln University has either. I guess what I'm getting from that though, George, is that a role or responsibility of us to be able to break that down further and offer it? I mean, we try and offer it through the demonstration aspect of what we do, but yeah, I guess I don't really have an answer to your question. I don't know if anyone else.
Just sorry to come in, Joe, but the reality is most of us farmers, certainly me, can't actually generate a graph like that and all the work that goes in behind.
Yep.
You know, there's a system, there's a spreadsheet that sits in behind it.
Yep.
But that could actually be templated, so you can download it, like we've got feed budgets on DairyNZ and various sites down there, that you can actually download it, look at your own farming business, have a discussion with all the people that are in there,
Yep.
and say, hey, where's this business going, and start to get some real direction around it. So I see the tool as, how do we get it out to more farms, given the challenges that you're all trying to balance up.
Yep.
It's not beat the challenge, it's how do you balance the different aspects.
Yep.
So enough from there.
Yep, good point, George. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to head down to the herd shortly and discuss some of the animal wellbeing results, but we won't have time to visit the calves, Tom. So I thought we can actually see the growth rate of the calves on page 23 in your handout. And I thought maybe you could just give us a brief overview of how the R2s are going out at grazing and also how our calves are going on the chicory at the moment.
Yeah, so the R2s are doing great. You know, they went off after their first year on the chicory system, looking really good. They were 23% or 33% ahead of target in June. So really pleased with how they went last year, and they've carried that through. Summer's been hard on them, but they're still about 10 weeks ahead in live weight compared to what they were last year. So they're at 426 now. Or 10th of February they were weighed, so yeah, they're still well ahead of target, so really pleased with that. We did, based on some spore counts that were done at both the grazing blocks, they've all been bolused now, and we split that cost 50-50 with the grazier. The grazing costs went up by another $1, so we're now $14.50. So we've looked at the numbers on what we're going to milk for the coming season, or the season after that, and based on around that 20% replacement rate, we'll just send 80 calves away. We reared 119 this spring and sold the surplus that we had from the pen in the spring, and we've now got another 12 on the market, which I've pending a viewing. They've also been sold. So. Yeah, another income stream to support the good payout.
Cool. Right.
Joe, everyone's heard enough from me about the farm system. How's the business health looking from the impacts of a pretty tough season, but supported really well with a good payout?
Thanks for asking, Tom. So it's been a bit of a revolving feast, the payout. We set our budget in March, right? So this time of the year we're already getting, advice from our grazier about what the prices are going to be and stuff like that, some insights into our budget. By the time we hit 1st of June, the payout had already been revised quite a few times, and I've kind of lost count of how many times we've sort of had to update it. Effectively, we go through to the end of the spring before we really worry about that, because the springtime we've already committed to what our pathway is going to be. What we did know very early on was that the implications of COVID were going to give us quite a lot of uncertainty about supply of products and about the associated costs of those products. So we've actually been really focused on securing what's been essential from an animal wellbeing and from a pasture and crop growth point of view. We only actually approved one out of budget expenditure early on, which was going to calf milk replacer from originally using vat milk, and that was related to the fact that the payout was so high, and we had the opportunity to try. And we talked about that at our last focus day, and you can ask us about that later if you like. So. Like we said earlier, we revised our milk production target back down to 166,000 for this season, and that's pretty much within our budgeted feed costs, etc. So we're not, the only cost we're going to incur is I think about an extra $7,000 for our palm kernel already, and an extra 10 I think for the fertiliser cost. So from a unit point of view, there's no more, but we're going to have to pay extra for it. So a couple of things that you'll note if you look through the actual cash flow that's on page 30 of your handout. There's unders and overs, as there always is. I'm sure you guys update your cash flow every month, don't you? Yeah, and there's greens and reds. I guess a couple of things to highlight that already to budget, we're about $267,000 worth of income higher than what we had originally budgeted on. And as Tom's already mentioned, some of that has come in extra stock sales, not all the coal stuff, so this is to the end of January, so all the cow stuff will come in when we revise update our budget with our cash flow again. Extra income from calves, extra dividend, I think it was it 15 cents that we got in October, which was really helpful. And so we knew right from the start that we were going to have quite a lot of extra income coming in this year. The areas that were underspent, a few that stick out probably are the silage made and the supplements purchased. The silage made, as Tom mentioned, we target about 55 hectares made. We made about 43, I think, or something at this stage. And the supplements purchased, so remember this is to the end of January. We actually didn't start feeding palm kernel out until quite late.
About the 10th,
About the 10th of January. So we were actually tracking behind on our supplement use because we had that feed there and available. That will right itself, and we expect that will actually come out higher than what we had in the budget. A couple of other areas, fertiliser, of course, was almost 20 grand over. One of Tom's most endearing habits is that he is like a squirrel, and he's very good about thinking about what he's going to need to get through to, at least the next 3 to 6 months. And so we were squirreling away nitrogen, and we were squirreling away minerals and things that we knew we were going to need to carry out production for the next sort of pretty much 3 to 4 months of the year. And so that extra fertiliser cost there includes all but think about 15 tonne of our nitrogen that's in our budget for the year. Effluent spreading is over. We decided early on to, instead of getting umbilical cord effluent spreading, which we've used in the past to get effluent onto areas that we don't have the irrigator access, we decided to do an extension of our effluent area. I think there was an extra, was it 12k or something roughly of that expense, and that aligns very well with our long-term strategy of dispersing effluent over more of the farm. And so we actually ended up with our farm working expenses was pretty much on budget. We're about $1,000 or something over, which by the time you're spending about 630 grand, we thought it's doing okay. So the key thing there is we stuck to the budget, right? So apart from that 11.6k worth of milk replacer, everything else was what was in the budget. We were focused on securing the products at the best price that we could. There's a couple of examples that are in your handout around the nitrogen purchase and the palm kernel purchase that we just wanted to highlight. Our nitrogen, I think we averaged 1,027 for our nitrogen over that period, and we had in our budget 800. So we'll be talking to Balance again about what we need to put in our budget for next year. And the other one was the palm kernel. We purchase about 160 tonne every year, and so far it looks like we'll get our average price at about 342, and we had in our budget 317. So has anyone else managed to secure their palm kernel lower than that over the last 12 months?
324.
324, and did you contract it all right at the beginning of the season? Yeah.
We contracted at 300.
At 300? Oh yeah, that's awesome. Have you had to buy any on the spot? Excellent, yeah. So when you start to fix those big items in your system, it does give you surety about what production you can do within that cost structure, doesn't it? So that was part of our strategy as well. So,
You talk about security and stuff, and, you know, budgets and all that feed and the side. Have you guys looked at futures, like the milk price?
We have talked about that in the past. I guess the thing that makes it a little bit complicated is the farm owner, which carries a lot of the risk of the future markets, have decided that they don't really want to potentially play that game, that we will just take the average price. We don't have anything against it, it just adds another level of complexity to the decision making that we don't probably have enough, we don't probably move quick enough in that space to get the full advantage. Yep. Is that what you're doing?
Oh, it's just a question.
Yeah, yep. Cool. Okay, so the other thing from a financial point of view then is we have revised our budget, so by the time we get to the end of pretty much December, we have a pretty good idea about the big chunky items that that we've spent on, and we've done quite a lot of our milk production season to date. A couple of things that we have done, knowing that there's quite a lot of money to be generated, this year we're looking at an extra, I think we're maybe 320,000 surplus before our finance charges. What we did was we sat down with our depreciation schedule. We looked at all the items that we've got on farm. We looked at all of those that have moved past their useful life, so the end of their depreciation time. And we ended up having, I think we've got $380,000 worth of items that are due to be replaced, right? Every year we put aside $90,000 worth of depreciation costs. And what we did was we analysed all of those items. Which ones did we need to replace that were, which ones, if they broke down, did we need to replace, and then what was their effective life left over? And when we looked at it, Tom and the team are really good about looking after old equipment. The shed here is older than me, and it's still going strong. We analysed its useful life. There's another good 10 years in it with a bit of R&M on it. And we ended up allocating about $60,000 worth of capital expenditure. So we actually look quite intently about what is it that we need to continue to operate our production system as it currently is, and what is it that we need to be spending money on. So out of that, we've put in 20k for the halter infrastructure. We've booked bale grabs and bale feeders, which we previously used to hire, and we're upgrading the tanker stand, which is a health and safety challenge potentially in the future. We've got money allocated for water upgrades and e-bikes, and that's pretty much it. So we haven't gone out and spent a whole lot of money on equipment that we don't need, but we have looked at every piece of equipment and analysed the risk. So the only bits of outstanding risk are the effluent irrigator, and so we're always aware that at any time that broke down we would need to spend that money straight away, but at this stage it's still working really well. There's no need to be replacing or upgrading things just because they're old, or else we'd both be gone, wouldn't we, Tom? Okay, so is there any questions about that?
Yeah, Joe, you started setting your budget for next year.
Uh,
What's that looking like?
Yeah, too early to tell, sorry Wade. Started accumulating data, yeah. The idea is that by the end of March we have that produced, and then we're able to then get that approved through the Farm Management Committee and then through the school, yeah. But we'll be releasing that once we have got it. We have a revised farm working expense target, which is actually at $4.60. We managed to get that approved, just to take into account the costs of these increasing standards that we have on farm. Right, so.
Got one more question for you, Joe.
You have you?
Joe, the farm team's been super busy over the last 3 months, especially when I was away for 2.5 of that. What have you been busy doing? I wasn't here to keep an eye on you, that's right.
Wishing I was having a holiday like you. No, just joking. It has been a bit challenging with COVID times, but what you'll see on page 32 and 33 is that part of our community goals and aspirations relate to the way we interact with our wider community, and that we have approval around the way our farm system operates. A couple of the highlights I just wanted to talk about was the number of students that are studying Ag Hort, and even though this represents what's happening at St Peter's, there's an extra Ag teacher on board, they're running out of classrooms again, which is a wonderful position to be in. We're seeing that across a lot of the secondary school situations as well. So the thing to take heart in is that there's people who are interested in primary production. If we can keep them in the industry, they will be our future, and they have no qualms facing head on some of these challenges that we see. So it's really, really encouraging to see the quality of people that are coming into the Ag and Hort stuff. The other thing I wanted to highlight was all along the boundary, 4.5 k's. Tom has done a wonderful job for the last 12 months working with contractors to get access to the cycleway. And has anyone ridden along it yet, this new cycleway? You have? Yeah. What do you think of it?
Yeah, brilliant.
Brilliant, yeah, cool. And we've got some signs down there where you can engage with our farm, QR codes, etc. And it allows people to have another insight into our farm, which we're really proud to be able to offer, which is cool. And of course our new website's gone live. So if you bring your camera onto any of these QR codes, that will take you straight to all the different sites on our website, so you can do a little bit of self-directed learning if you like. Okay, awesome. Thanks for those great questions, Tom.
No worries.
The last section that we wanted to talk about, and I've brought in a special guest speaker for us before we head out to the cows, is quality workplace. Now, some of you might be aware that we have got Halter on farm now, which has been really cool for us. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the decision was not made yesterday, okay? There was a lot of things that went in behind it, and one of the key pieces of input that was really helpful for us was engaging with DairyNZ, and there's a couple of people, particularly in that team, Brian Dela Rue and Callum Eastwood, who if you've ever had the chance to talk to, if you're considering technology, talk to them. We're really lucky to have Brian here today. Where are you, Brian? Oh, over here. Come on up, Brian. Tom, do you want to give your mic to Brian? Brian is a research engineer at DairyNZ, and he's been there about 14 years or so, I think.
Shush.
Brian, it's been a while. And one of the great things about DairyNZ is that they have an overview about how technology is adopted on farm, what people are using and why, and also are able to talk a little bit about why, what does technology have to do for it to be successful. So I've asked Brian to come along and talk a little bit about it. What you'll find in your handout is that there's information on page 39. And what I was going to get Brian just to do is just to give us an overlay about what has been happening with technology adaptation on New Zealand dairy farms. Is there more, or is there less, or what's the general trend?
Well, there's page 39, I think you can see on there. We do a technology survey every 5 years since 2008. Our last one was 2018, and it changes a bit depending on payout, etc. But you can see on that graph there that farmers are adopting automation technologies. They're saying to us that they're looking to make milking save time, make the job easier, and in a lot of cases trying to have a one-person milking shed. So they're very aware of the labour productivity issues around milking. It takes up about 50% of the time on the farm. In terms of automation technologies, data capture technologies, that's quite low still. A number of reasons. Sometimes it's a lack of confidence in the performance of a technology. It might be that its perceived value isn't there at the moment. It might be fit with the particular farm, but that takes time to evolve, and I think we're doing another survey next year. I think we'll see quite an increase in animal wearables, heat detection, collars and tags and things like that, as farmers have gained confidence, have seen some acceptable results, good results from those. And it's about farmers taking the time to gain confidence and also look at their pain points, really trying to work out where do they need to put their effort, I guess. If I could just make a plug along the way, we've done a podcast on technology. It just went online yesterday, I think. So have a listen to that with Callum Eastwood, as you mentioned, and myself answering a few questions around technology. And we had Will Barrett, who's the GM at Ngaitahu Farms in Christchurch in Canterbury, and he's given a good overview of what their philosophy is around technology investment, what they're expecting from it, what they've used, and their experiences. And a few other experiences he's had too. So he's had a bit of rich information to the conversation. We tend to talk at a little bit of a higher level, and you need a few farmers in there who are using their technology to say, this is what it means to me, this is what I need to get out of it. All farms are a little bit different, all farmers have different needs. It's not one size fits all. You've got to choose what works for you, I guess.
So Brian, who in the audience now is making a consideration or thinking about investing in more technology on their farm? Put your hand out if you are at the moment. Anyone? A couple of you, okay. Excellent. So Brian, what sorts of things do we need to do to make sure that investment decision is going to withstand the test of time?
Well, I'll step back a bit first. Maybe I think we have to have a more serious conversation around our farm businesses and our workplaces going forward. We've got some big challenges, and technology will suit up and will help us out in that way. But when you look at things like the critical labour shortage at the moment, we've got between about 4,000 and 6,000 farm workers short across New Zealand. We've really noticed that with the borders being closed as well. We're not attracting and retaining people as we'd like. And that's a problem. We've got to compete with more businesses for those people. We've got real issues with labour productivity. We haven't really improved labour productivity that much in the last decade. In terms of we need better measures, and we're working on that. But cows to FTE, output per hour's work, those sort of things. So we really have to have a think stepping forward. What can we do to do that? And it's going to be, we've got to move to have a less reliance on people. We've got to look at how we can either eliminate tasks, reduce tasks, or automate tasks. And we can do that in small ways, just manually, or we can look at technologies that might work for us as you analyse your business. Those decisions will be different, a little bit different. I guess where the key things for we've got to change the way we work. The key things: less reliance on people, reduced hours of work, a better job, better rosters, fewer unsociable hours. Use of data and decision making. We've got to start moving down that track over time, so we can make more prompt decisions, quicker and more accurate. Help those less experienced people become good farmers. We've got to improve workplace safety. We can't afford to have people off work in spring with sprains and strains. Now, right at the moment, we've got a project with ACC about reducing sprains and strains in spring, and we've surveyed and interviewed over 100 farmers about what are some of the issues on there. And some of those farms are down 1 or 2 staff sometimes at a critical time, and some of that is just making simple changes. People are getting injured, back injuries, lifting calves, on the calf pickup. How do we change that in the calf trailer perhaps? People are twisting their ankle on rough ground in the paddocks. Have we got the right footwear? Slips and trips in the shed, putting people off work, carrying heavy buckets of milk across to the calf feeding area. So if we analyse our business, and I think that's the part I was getting onto, is we need to start here on our big goals, and then we need to go from there and say, let's step down and review all the processes on our farm and have a good old look at how we do them. And firstly, can we be more efficient? Look at the way we do it. There's a lot of, in any business, a lot of wasted time along the way. Can we look at how can we be more efficient? Because getting home half an hour earlier makes a big difference to people's jobs, everyone, including the boss. Mitigating the risk, and asking a team, because a team who are doing the job sometimes has some bloody good ideas about how we could do things differently. So we're trying to do that with injuries. We've had people who are ergonomics people and a few other people like that who are fresh to dairy looking and saying, why are you doing it like that? It's fresh thinking. We can't change everything overnight, but if we have that view of continued improvement, how can we improve this? How can we make this job better? How can the boss's job be better? It'll make a big difference. And you're doing the same with all your equipment, but let's do it with our workplace and our people as well, to say we need them motivated, we need them rested. Probably an example I could give around that from years ago. I did a trial on a farm down in Canterbury, around about Richie McCaw's hometown, and milking 1,200 cows on a very long, narrow farm. Cups on was at 4 a.m. One of the farm team got up at 2:30 in the morning to open the gate so the cows could walk up to the shed. You know, I think something like the automatic gate opener, the old bat latch, could have paid for itself within a few weeks. The person getting up, the impact it has on that person, the impact it has on that person's productivity, fatigue, decision making and injuries, it just flows on. So it's just analysing parts and saying, you know what, we can do better here, let's just work out what it is and look for technologies and manual processes that you know, are viable, you know, we've got to pay for them, that help us step through to make life on the farm more efficient, more productive and more enjoyable to be there. Workplace stuff, it's around, we've got to have really great communication with our farm teams. We've had workshops with farmers trying to describe what great workplaces look like. Great communication is one of the key things. They want opportunity to grow in the role. They want some flexibility. They want to have some choice about the work they do if they can. And the big thing was they want appreciation when they do a good job as well. So we've been trying to pilot a few small things, you know, small technologies that make a difference around that, so that you know, these people can you know, have what they believe is a much more valuable job to them. Probably one example of that would be at Lion Farms down south. Reese Roberts, who was one of the farmers in the group we had, he's, you know, they've got a number of farms there, but on one of the farms, he's developed an app about it's called something like Work Choice, where he lets the farm team choose the shifts they work on the farm. So he split the day into 3 4-hour blocks. The farm team goes into the app and they decide which blocks they want to work. So, you know, if they want to be at the school on Wednesday afternoon, they can work around that. So there's a minimum, maximum amount of hours they can do. He looks at other people off that farm, himself and a few others in the community, to fill in any gaps he needs. So he's giving them some more flexibility. It has to be managed, which they're really appreciating, and you're seeing it in the community. And also he wants to do more things like, if someone's doing a skilled job like welding, he wants to pay them the welding rate for that job. So, you know, he can reward people for having skill and getting skills, which you can't pay, you know, welders' rate all year round. So it's all about those small things that can add up quite nicely. Another, you know, innovation around there, I'm going off track a bit here, which is, I'm pretty
Last point, and then I'll let you go. Yep.
The other thing that was really successful we did was around supporting emerging leaders, some of our young 2ICs, with emotional intelligence and leadership. Some of those young people were being promoted on skill and then having to manage people on quite large farms. So online, bite-sized learning, without leaving the farm, with a consultant who ran this. Over a period of 3 months, they had you know, a couple of hours in the middle of the day, every couple of weeks, an app kept them up to date with key skills. The learning was incredible. They really appreciated how they grew as people and how they grew as leaders, and that makes the whole team work better. So there are some of the sort of technologies that are higher and lower cost. We've got Halter here as a great example of innovation, a team who are really innovating quickly and you know, quite disruptive in the industry in terms of how quickly they've started to go to a viable product. We'll see more about that later. So what can they do? Is that your question?
Well, I guess the key thing is you can understand when you start to talk to people like Brian and Callum how important it is to assess your own workplace. And on pages 34 and 35 in the handout, you can see that over time we've been tracking the hours that we've been working every week. But it's not just the hours that we're working, it's what we're doing during that time. And one of the trends that we've noticed is that we've been able to shift some of that peak workload in the spring, but what that's been replaced by is quite a heavy workload in the summer, because with part of our I guess response to changing climatic situations is that we're having to feed more feed, and for us that's more crops, and that's often more silage or palm kernel. So we're using the data, just like Brian said, to understand what your team is doing. It's understanding, it's not just about people in the team, it's the hours worked. And then once we understand a little bit about where we're spending that time, we can have some insights into some of the challenges. One of the great points Brian talked about is the quality of the work. The hardest job in the summer is putting up limb and brake fences, and if you try and put them up either in turnips where you roll your ankles, or kale, where I just happened to lose 30 students last year in a crop of kale because it was a 16-tonne crop. It's really challenging, and you talk to the team, effectively you're saving an hour and a half a day, but it feels like 3 hours a day because it's the type of work that you're doing in the heat of the sun and the fact that it has to be done every day before that next stage can happen, which is the cows going into the paddock, things like that. So using the information, like Brian said, to analyse your own farm system, see where your pinch points are, talk to your team about what are the things that are going to make the ship go faster, it's going to make it more enjoyable for us, and it's going to ensure that we have a better quality workplace, is a really important part of targeting where technology is actually going to be of use to you.
Yep. And then I guess once you've really quantified what you're currently doing, how many hours you spend, what it's costing you, you've got something really solid to compare with that technology option when you evaluate it as well. And you really have to focus on that product delivering what you want, knowing what the success looks like for you. The other features it might have is a bonus. It must do that first job well first, and actually do what it says in the box. So technology performance, you have to know how well it works. That isn't easy. You know, there isn't a lot of scientific information available. We did some work quite a few years ago, very labour intensive and costly to do to evaluate some equipment. But you know, that's a responsibility of the companies to give that information, and other good farmers who are testing them, who can provide transparency in what they're doing, so farmers can gain confidence. There's how well does that technology fit on your farm? You know, if you weren't doing that sort of work before and you're going to put a technology in, are you really going to be the champion for it and make it work? You need a champion on your farm. If you take on board a different sort of technology, you need to have someone who's really focused on it, saying, how do we make this tech work? In the past, there's plenty of CDX machines and other things sitting in the shed. We've got to work out what do we need to do, how do we adapt, how do we make this technology adapt to deliver what we want? And it doesn't just happen by osmosis. You've got to really drive that. I was just looking at the, with the Halter system, Halter is a tool for delivering some exciting opportunities. But, and it'll certainly save you time. It'll put that fence in the place you want it to. But it's not going to harvest you more pasture if you're sitting in the office drawing the line on the phone. You have to also be sort of understanding moving that fence at the right time and doing those things. So it's people and technology together which are going to make it work. So it's your commitment to delivering some results after you've put the money in.
Excellent. So when we scoped out, what technology was going to be an enabler to overcome some of the challenges we had at our farm, one of the things that we did look at, there was that 4D4F technology warehouse, which literally is a global shopping centre of technology. There's 137 products out there that effectively we're able to feed and look after some of the animal wellbeing outcomes. So this space is huge and it's growing really, really quickly. It's really important to be able to break it down and understand the key functionality that you needed, and so we were able to do that. And then what we did was we compared the current technology versus the potential future technology with the products against our wagon wheel KPIs. And we looked at where the expense was going to be incurred, and we looked at where we were going to potentially save costs, and we looked at where we could potentially increase our income related to it. So in your handout on page 37 is a couple of examples that came out of our, it was like a 26 page proposal document that we spent pretty much 18 months going through, checking through everything, every possible outcome, every other product that was on the market, till we could get to the point where we could validate what we could potentially get out of this product and what it needed to do to be able to be successful. And so that, that's from April, pretty much March 2020 till pretty much the 11th of January 2022 when the collars went on the cows. So that was our journey to date. Technology is not one of those things you see it's flash, you buy it. Put the work in and understand what it is that your farm business needs and understand what your measurement of success is going to be. Gary.
Joe, I suppose I should apologise before I start. There was a lot of bullshit.
Apology accepted. Why is it bullshit, Gary?
We're mixing up, I suppose, technology and technological advances and productivity. And,
Yep.
And Brian, it's not about fresh thinking. It's actually about just some thinking. And like your example of the guy going down the farm at 2:30 in the morning. Well, if he did some thinking, maybe took a spade with him, he could dig a post hole at 2:30 in the morning. It was a hell of a lot better than the heat today. And he could replace a couple of posts before the cows got home. It took him 2 hours. You know, and it's just like that. It's just about thinking, you know, getting the guys to think. And you talk about productivity and performance. And what I see, a lot of money getting spent on stuff to compensate for bad thinking. And you talk about all those things, whether it be lifting a calf or lifting whatever else. So much can be done by improving productivity by just getting people to engage their brain. You know, take a bucket with some staples, some insulators, and remember when the cows are walking and you go around and tack on a broken wire or something like that. And it's not hard, but it's about thinking. Then your performance straight away goes up because you don't go back after milking to go and fix some fences or whatever else. And so I think you're mixing up what technology can do and what just some thinking will do.
You're right. I can't agree with you. I can't disagree with you at all around that. But it's really about what happens when that doesn't work. You've got to, and sometimes technology is a compromise for that lack of career path aspiration, that logical thinking. We're struggling to employ those people who are coming through. Some people want a job and they're waiting for the next instruction, and we've got to try and keep them busy. It's not an easy workforce necessary to, you know, highly motivated in some cases, you know, just there for the job in other cases. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. ACC said to us with the sprains and strains, they said, we're looking for some engineering type or system type changes. We've tried and tried with messages around, you know, ergonomics and careful lifting. It doesn't work. Farmers are busy, they're in a hurry, things happen, they get injured. You know, so unfortunately the common sense when you're busy sometimes goes out of the window, or people aren't motivated enough to use their eyes and thoughts around it. And maybe that's that whole background. If you've come from farming and family and through, as you have, you know, you've got that built in. Some people haven't, and we have to compensate.
So I agree. So the other part of that, too, from a technology point of view, where there's a big roadblock, and it's right up there where you guys are standing. It's DairyNZ, it's LIC and things like that. And you can go to any other industry where technology is employed, you know, and you can look at our farm machinery. It doesn't matter what colour tractor you buy, you can hook a different colour piece of machinery onto it. You know, you go to in the film industry, and it doesn't matter what you employ for your basically you can hook a, you know, different cameras, different lenses can hook on everything else, and they all talk to each other. There's a standard communication. You know, and even if I employ technology like getting a pregnancy test done on her test rather than scanning the cows, mine won't recognise age pregnancies, even though they've all been inseminated and got a pregnancy. They don't recognise my age pregnancy. We've got condition scoring on farm, but mine won't accept my condition scores and everything else. I can't get the value of that data back. So we end up working with our technology in silos, and the biggest block is there's no integration within that, and so you employ the information, or and you end up having so many different silos. You need to learn about 20 different bits of software because you guys don't, you know, there's no centralised organisation.
You've expressed the pain of many farmers. Double entry, quadruple entry of data, technologies that don't talk to each other, which really stifles innovation when someone's got a nice little piece of kit they want to add into it. But there's commercial realities of companies wanting to protect their IP. Just had recent conversations around the world around where has robotic milking got to, what about automatic just cupping, things like that. The patents that are all over some of that stuff just make it very difficult for people to work in. And a lot of companies don't want to work with other companies. They have a business model. What work has been done is around data standards, so that when people do agree to a share, it is in the right format to be shared. So that's got to be worked. So some work with Rosea has gone around setting up how does it come together so that it can be used. But there's still got to be agreement about who shares the data. It should be owned by farmers, and they should be able to share it.
Just picking up on that, 100% right on that whole data and silos. So the question I've got, Joe, to you is you've put the Halter technology on, you've highlighted a real issue around crops and putting fences up. How did you weigh up between, because the other alternative is let's not do crops, then you don't have to put the fences up in them. So how did you balance that off? Because you've got a decision around crops and that incurs work, then you put a decision around technology which incurs capital but does away with the work. Did you look at the counterfactual, which was take away the crops?
Not directly, George. So we didn't say if we took the crops away, the crops are still a really fundamental part climate mitigation and also our pasture and crop harvested strategy. And once we take away the crops, we need to start pouring concrete. So when it comes to the farm system point of view, the crops were still very heavily part of our future. So that's why we didn't indirectly look at, because there's 100 million different ways we could have skinned the cat. If we took out that, buying more feed, we could have poured some concrete, put in a feed pad, and then you'd have to analyse the environmental impacts of that. But no, we didn't look at it from that perspective because the crops were still part of our future.
Okay, so, and that's good. So when you actually do the planning, and you're doing it very, very well, do you actually sit some in a non-negotiable basket?
Yep, that.
So the crops, what you're saying, becomes a non-negotiable, and because you don't want to pour concrete, and I am actually not debating the merits of that, I can absolutely see it. So that what I'm trying to do is trying to get a real plan. How do we actually make these decision-making processes easier for farmers?
Yep.
And so what I'm almost saying is when you do your wagon wheel, you actually need to say this one is actually non-negotiable.
Yeah, so 45-hour week.
Stock or crops or whatever.
Yep. So 45-hour week, non-negotiable. We started to look at some of the animal wellbeing stuff, non-negotiable. How does our community perceive us, non-negotiable? So we try and use the directive that comes out of the wagon wheel KPIs as our test. Yep. So if we chose not to do crops, what's the impact on the rest of our wagon wheel? All of a sudden it starts to get a little bit unbalanced. How are we going to then balance achieving body condition score targets in the summer if we don't have crops? We're going to have other source of feed. How are we going to feed it out? Et cetera, et cetera. So we do tend to go down that pathway when we do explore the opportunities, yeah.
It's a great point, and even though we're involved with technology, you really have to look at the viable alternatives. For instance, we've got our virtual fencing and put the fences up and save that time there. Sometimes other people might say, well, if I don't have enough time in the day, could I consider fewer milkings, go to 3 and 2, 10 and 7, those things. Yeah. Can I create more time through fewer milkings that allow me to have more time to do those other tasks? So you've got to weigh all it up and then go with the one that works best.
Yep.
Teasing it out a bit more, sorry, to be a pain. Wagon wheel's great. Have you actually taken out and created 2 or 3 wagon wheels? So under this model, we've got wagon wheel, it looks perfectly round at the moment. But if we actually went to this system, it gives us either a wonky wagon wheel or a more round wagon wheel.
Yeah.
So lining up
the wheels,
instead of working with the existing wagon wheels, have a series of wagon wheels and then define the system with the roundest wagon wheel.
Yep.
Was that been done?
Yep, so that was done originally to get the farm system on the environmental journey. So I think that was 2000 and maybe 16, 17, I think, something like that. Was that Tom? Yep. And so now we're at the point now where we are redoing that again. So we're doing a full farm system analysis. There is what we were waiting to land on the ground, where carbon prices were going to look like, where our nitrogen limits were going to look like, and what the farm area was going to look like. Those 3 things have now become quite clearer for us, to the point that we can start to factor in those variable parameters. So we are engaging with some farm system modelling, which includes all of our wagon wheel KPIs, to look what our system looks like, not next year, but the year after. It's just a really big piece of work. You don't want to be doing it every year, and we have to contract in some support to do that. So we're at that point now, and that's probably, 5, 6 years later, we're redoing that again. Yep, so yep, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do want to head down towards the cows. We can carry on with these questions and conversations when we get out in the paddock, but we did want to go and have a look at the kale and some of the technology in action.